Welcome back. It's Tim and Julie Harris, and this is your favorite daily real estate coaching and training podcast. And this is Friday. It's our favorite day of the week because we give ourselves permission to talk about whatever is on our mind. And oftentimes it's stuff that has nothing to do with real estate. Some of you guys have said that this is your favorite podcast of all the ones we do every single day of the week. And because we are so, I think, off the cuff and some of the conversations we have, Julie always is preparing really great anecdotal stories on Friday, but also great notes on every podcast. And remember, if you want the notes for our podcast, the easy button is just to become a subscriber to our newsletter, harrisrealestatedaily.com. And then you'll get all of our notes. You'll get a video. You'll get a lot of unique content. The newsletter is free. So just go to harrisrealestatedaily.com, or you can just click the link below. All right, Julie, without any further delay, I'm looking that you have a lot of stories. And I see you chose the title, Octopuses Throwing Shells and Other Market Disruptions. Oh, we do need to give our little disclaimer warning.
Disclaimer,
right?
yes.
This is not our normal podcast. Our normal podcast is real estate coaching and training. That is what we're, fairly famous for. Yes, so if you're looking for tactical, practical real estate coaching and training, do listen to any of our literally thousands of other podcasts. The Fridays are free for all, free flowing, sometimes freaky Friday. Fun.
You've been warned.
Yeah, those I can't think of any other F words. All right, let's go.
Yes, and fun. And just to remind them, if it is your fortune or misfortune of this being your first Tim and Julie podcast, you mentioned that normally it's real estate. We did topics like how to get better mortgage interest rates for your buyers a couple of days ago. We had a great discussion about wealth building and wealth myths. So refer to previous podcasts if you're wanting that real estate focused podcast. But on to Fun Friday, as promised. The title is Octopuses Throwing Shells and Other Market Disruptions. Now, story number one, we can't totally get away from real estate. So this will be our only real estate focused segment. And these are going to be quick, Tim, so we can skip around if you want to.
Sure.
The title of point number one is back to 1995, but buyers are stirring. Sales of new single family homes dropped to their lowest June level since 1995, and condo sales are at their lowest level since 1973. But the story doesn't end there. So fear not, listeners. Buyer activity is warming up. Housing Wire's Logan Motoshami reports purchase apps are up 16% from the seasonal low, and we have had 5 positive prints in the past 6 weeks. So what is up with that? How can you have both of those things true at the same time? Well, that is likely due to the fact that we also have inventory. So how are these things related? When we have more inventory, that means, of course, more homes for sale, and most sellers are also buyers, okay? So if your house is for sale, there's a high likelihood that you are one of those purchase applications right now getting ready for when your house actually sells. Make sense, Tim?
Yeah, it does. And so I want to just interject this. There was another big report, or really something that came out on X last night, that says that essentially those of you who've been following the whole Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac conservatorship saga since 2008, 2009, as we have, guess what? It looks like it's finally on its way to being released from conservatorship. And what this actually means is that you're going to see a lot more mortgage products, a lot more, frankly, interest rates are going to fall, everything that the housing market needs. And I want you all to pay attention to something very important. And we've been pointing this out really in earnest since the beginning of the year. The housing is definitely in a 3-year, really it's a depression. So technically, without going into
sales depression. Let's be clear.
A sales depression. That's right. So in a sales depression that's lasted 3 years is something obviously we need to take a serious look at. And you're seeing the government, and you're seeing what we believe is going to be called Make Housing Great Again. Obviously we're borrowing that from the president, but the reality of it is that seems like it's a good name for it. And we've done a lot of podcasts about this. So if you're curious about what we think is going to happen over the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and by the way, 25 years, do go back and listen to our past podcasts, and just all you got to do is go to Google and just put in, Tim and Julie Harris podcast, or just put in Make Housing Great Again. Mm-hmm. Make Housing Great Again. We've kind of dominated those keywords, but you'll see what I'm talking about. And listen to the most recent show. We're updating that podcast content about every 90 days as more information comes out. But look, every reason to believe right now that what we're going to see is a restructuring of the entire mortgage process. We're going to see a real reduction in junk fees that are being baked into every mortgage that we are not even all aware of. all these
Mhm.
things. So that's what I'm really excited about. And you guys should be excited about it as well, because we're going to see the real problem in real estate, which isn't overpricing of homes, which isn't really even lack of inventory now. The real pricing in real estate is, if frankly, payments are too high. That's the thing that's keeping folks
Yep.
from buying homes is they can't afford the payments. And that's all coming to an end sometime in the next 60 to 90 days. So to summarize, pay attention to what's happening, step away from mainstream media, start paying attention. Even frankly, some of the housing news is behind on this information by at least 60 to 90 days. So the big report yesterday that came out, and you guys were investors in Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, you should be, celebrating this. But Trump is meeting with all the largest investment banks with trying to have them pitch him on which one should be taking Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac public. So it looks like they're going to essentially form a new company, a new entity, a new name, and they're going to essentially take it to and take it public. And that's going to it's going to change everything about housing. I can't understate how important that is. Housing, real estate, I want you to think about this, has essentially been socialized. And I'm not trying to be political, I'm just stating facts, because there really is only one decider of who gets mortgages and who doesn't effectively, and that's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. And by the release from conservatorship and making it a publicly traded company again, the other thing it's going to do, which I'm excited about, it's going to create competitors that are essentially, big banks and whoever knows whoever else is going to get into the industry. But we're going to see more differing companies that are offering different products for mortgages. Again, this is going to give a whole new generation of folks options on how to purchase homes. Now, if you want to buy a home, here are your set of rules. Here are the overlays for the mortgage guidelines.
Yeah, the same way it's been done for years, decades, really. We're
Right.
going to be getting away from that, both with new mortgage products, new entities that are offering those. And, in the meantime, you guys have houses to sell, right? So this is something interesting to follow. It's a moving story. But remember, we just did a podcast 2 or 3 days ago about how to achieve a 4 or 5% interest rate in a 6 to 7% interest rate environment. So though this is absolutely, I think, probably the most compelling story that we're dealing with in real estate right now,
For
it's
sure.
going to take a while to play out. So don't be one of those agents that says, "Oh, I'm going to wait until rates come down." And you even listening to your buyer prospects who are saying that to you, we showed you, I think, 4 different specific ways to achieve a lower rate even today. So don't wait.
Well, to your point, Julie, which is a really good point, you got to make sure that you're clear, all of you real estate folks out there. You're listening to us globally, right? Watching us on YouTube globally. You got to be really clear. As the mortgage market cures itself, essentially, with these new programs, as more people are able to afford the house payments with the prices of homes as they are, that's going to increase demand. The increased demand is going to drive prices up. The driving prices up
Yeah.
will then put a lot of people who maybe, they're going to then be put in a situation where maybe they can't afford the payments on the houses that are now more expensive because they waited. So anytime you hear somebody say, I'm going to wait until next year, just ask them a simple question. So based on what you're seeing happen with the appreciation, really, it's truly inflation on real estate, Mr. Buyer, do you think that houses will be more expensive next year or less expensive? And if they say less expensive, then you're probably dealing with somebody that's never going to buy anything. But if they say more expensive, then you need to have the conversation with them that it makes sense for them to lock in a long-term interest rate now. Yeah, maybe they buy it down to what we were educating you guys on that podcast, but they can always refinance because the price of the house will most assuredly increase over the next 12 months, and they can, ditch the existing mortgage where if the rates are, down substantially, get rid of the existing mortgage, refinance a year from now, you have the benefit of the year's worth of appreciation. That is called a win-win. So make sure you know how to educate your consumers. And again, if they resist that saying, well, we're going to wait for prices to fall, that's not a real buyer because prices are not going to fall. Julie.
There are 0 indicators saying
Yeah.
that prices will fall. And people will argue, just this will be the last point, and we'll put a period at the end of that sentence. People will argue that, I think I see prices coming down. Well, it's normal to have 30 to 35% of current active inventory require one price adjustment or more before it actually sells in any kind of market, up market, down market, buyers, sellers, balance, doesn't matter. That's because pricing property can be a challenge. It's rare to have cookie cutter comps, right? So that does not mean that prices are crashing. And in fact, to your point, Tim, when rates do come down across the board and we have these additional products, it could stimulate a new boom, which means prices will go up even more. And on top of that, you'll have to compete again. How fun is
Well,
that?
Well, look, here's all you have to know. The average age of a first-time buyer up to about a decade, maybe not even that long ago, was 28. Now it's 38. So
Yes.
why are people not wait? Why have they been, procrastinating buying a house? And all the things that come with buying a house, family formation, having children, all the rest of it. You could say lack of inventory, and you'd be right. But really, it's the inability to afford the payment. And when payments fall, you're going to see a huge increase. All the folks that have been putting off buying their first home or maybe selling their current home and moving up, they're all going to be in the market. All the normal reasons why people buy and sell real estate, death, birth, relocation, financial issues, need a larger home, all the normal things, those people have been on the sidelines waiting for things to happen. And that waiting has been for 3, almost 4 years now. The waiting is going to be over. The surge of activity that's going to enter into the market is going to be like nothing I know in my professional life with Julie in real estate for, well over 2 decades. I know it's going to be unprecedented. Nothing in history is going to feel like the real estate boom that we're all about to experience.
So
And
there's no
guys,
reason to wait.
if you don't believe me, just listen to the past podcasts we did, Make Housing Great Again. And then, argue with me about the points in the comments. Let me know what you think, why we think we might be wrong. By the way, no one's done that yet so far because the points have been very well researched and make total sense. I'll give you the takeaway. Demographics, the sheer enormous amount of people that want to transact will always, that's what essentially will win every argument as to why there's a housing boom, and we're at the very beginning stages of it. All right, Julie, let's roll in.
Okay, moving away from real estate a little bit. If I were to tell you, point number 2, Jaws came before dinosaurs and ancient sharks were found in, guess where? Kentucky, of all places. I just thought this was a fun little tiny story. In Kentucky's Mammoth Cave.
I'm laughing at how crappy that we went from one thing. Now we're talking about dinosaurs in Kentucky, but it's Friday. Like I said,
it's about real estate. Maybe you own property in Kentucky and find, let's say near Kentucky's Mammoth Cave, scientists discovered 2 12-foot long fossilized sharks from over 325 million years ago. I'm not even going to try and say it. It's Troglodonus or something. The remains were sealed in limestone, preserving rarely fossilized cartilage structures of these are ginormous sharks, again, in Kentucky. Now, can you go swimming in that Mammoth Cave to look at that? No, they don't allow that, but you can do some hikes around there. And I just thought that was kind of like last place you'd look for sharks.
Okay, so you want to go swimming in a cave where it's already dark and creepy as hell.
Yeah, not for me
to go
either.
look at the ancient bones of dinosaurs.
People do that.
I'm going to go with no.
Better fossilized than the real thing.
Well, but true. That is the very recipe for a lifelong series of bad dreams.
What could go wrong? Okay. Point number 3. That was just a little tiny one.
Story number 3.
Yes. Well, so here's the thing. Practically guaranteed to have an octopus story on our Fun Friday. Welcome to Octopuses, the underwater real estate with a view. See how I'm trying to segue real estate? In coastal Australia, scientists documented over 20 octopuses living together in what they are now calling Octopolis, and another one called Octlantis. They're using tools, they're arranging rocks, they're sharing space, and even throwing shells at each other. From being solitary, these cephalopods are now considered social builders. Even octopuses have neighbors that they wish they could move. So, what about the cephalopod HOA rules? Probably. Maybe they're only allowed 1 shell per den because they keep on winging them at each other. No throwing debris during arguments, and maybe bring your own camouflage. But it's interesting that they're being communal versus, the reputation in a lot of the studies on octopuses show them being very solitary all the time. But now we have 2 examples of little octopus cities. There you go.
Wow, you have really maybe reached peak super nerd, my dear.
Not yet. There's more to come.
Oh boy. Oh my gosh, you're right. I'm reading your notes.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. All right, keep going. Let's go.
Okay. Number 4, you may have heard in the past week or 2 about Coca-Cola moving back to sugarcane and away from corn syrup. So Coca-Cola is replacing high fructose corn syrup, which is known as HFCS for short, with real U.S. grown sugarcane in select markets across the country. Why does this matter? Because it's a lot more the story than just soda. Now, I have several points there. I won't read all of them, but one of them is that it could increase demand for domestic sugarcane and revive jobs in rural communities, especially in the South. We already have a lot of sugarcane farms, and those farmers apparently have been lobbying for this for a long time. Let's see. Here's a real estate spin on this. Let's say that this comes back soon, and one of the things they're talking about is to be manufacturing these into the old school glass Coca-Cola bottles. So you could, a couple of thoughts here, real estate listeners. Maybe you make a fun comparo, old Coke versus new Coke. I don't think they're going to call it new Coke because they already messed that branding up. But sugarcane versus not. You could do a fun comparison. You could have people vote on your social media. You could do a pop by gift with one of those, maybe a 6-pack of the retro bottles and have something, sweet deals and sweet drinks. Here's to the real thing, a pop by idea. Maybe you could include a bottle opener and a nostalgic Coke ad from the 1950s and use this for your pop by visits to past clients.
Okay, so you're telling me, just so I'm clear, because
Yes.
you're going to trigger me to do something that I was actually thinking about doing as a surprise for Zoe.
Oh.
So you're telling me that they're making those from what you just read.
That's what they're saying, yeah.
The short bottles that used to have in those machines from the 1950s.
Yeah, the glass bottles.
I was just looking at one of those on an auction site that was fully restored that worked. And wouldn't that be
cool?
That they're refrigerated? Wouldn't that be a cool thing to have?
That
and
would be very
basically,
cool.
and put, Coke in it. And, of course I'd make it so Zoe would have to pay for it. That'd be a good way for her to earn money from doing chores. And it would most likely be not filled with Coke, but maybe water. But the point of it is
Sparkling water. She loves sparkling water. You could do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Well, so I also had a little note. I don't think you're privy to this latest conversation.
Uh-oh.
Let's see. Let me just make sure I've got the right notes here. Okay, so Zoe told me I guess she heard us. Maybe she was reading this as I was printing it off.
Zoe's our 11 and 11 and a half year old daughter, by the way.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So she just got back from camp, and she said, "You're not going to believe the conversation I had with one of my campmates about high fructose corn syrup." Oh, I know, because she's baking while we do this podcast. She was telling me she likes to make things from scratch, but she's going to make an exception because there's a mix in the cabinet, blah, blah, blah. And she said she had this argument because this kid she was talking to was like, there's no real corn in cake mix, because she didn't understand, what corn syrup was. So Zoe went into her long description about what that was. And then this other kid comes out of the woodwork and says, well, they use that in the skincare that you're using. And so this argument ensued to Zoe saying, yes, but I don't eat my skincare. So anyway, I'm sure there's more to that story, but
no, that's good. I mean, I
where it
really
goes.
appreciate you're taking us down a side road, but, we had a lot of conversations with Zoe trying to explain to her all the nastiness that's made its way into food. And I started, basically here's the short code to move past trying to explain to her what chemicals are and the rest of it, because I didn't get very far on that one. I just gave her a bag or a box, and I said, I want you to be able to read to me all of those ingredients, pronounce all the words, and then tell me where you can get them from nature. And then she went through a couple of the things that she likes to eat. And then she quickly realized that basically it was all a bunch of fake crap. Because she couldn't pronounce the words. And I said, well, where are you going to get blah, 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 47 letters of, some
monosodium glutamate and blah, blah, blah.
Whatever the hell it is, right?
Yeah.
Where are you going to get that on a tree or whatever? And then she very quickly, that locked in. And now she will look at every single thing before she eats it, and she won't eat it anymore. And I think that's really important. And it's, I wonder how many adults do that. I bet very few.
Well, I'll go to the grocery store and observe. Not very many. This is one of the reasons it takes us so long at the grocery store, is because she does look at stuff like that. And for the most part, excuse me, for the most part, we've gone to just, fruits and vegetables. And, if we're going to have chicken nuggets are the greatest example ever, because if you look at all the guck that they put into those, and kids love those, well, you can make your own chicken nuggets. It's not that hard. We've become connoisseurs of that while we've been at the cabin, with real ingredients that you can actually identify, and they actually taste a lot better. So anyway, I could go down that road for a while, but it's interesting that at 11 and a half, they have these discussions, and this is what's turned her into a real baker. She could be the best commercial for Williams-Sonoma. It's like, of all the catalogs and magazines that we get, she just loves to look at Williams-Sonoma, and she's asked me this morning for a stand mixer and all of her plans. So
all right,
ready to eat some stuff. Okay.
Next point, Julie.
All right. Next is number 5. Say what? The wild origins of some everyday phrases that we still use. I just pulled out a few of these. As you know, I'm a bit of a word nerd. And I also wanted to highlight, I do listen to a great podcast called A Way with Words. If you ever want something that's off the menu from real estate, I think they only do maybe one a week, but it's a great, interesting podcast about words. Peak nerd here. Okay, so I think you know this one, Tim. The saying, what's your monthly nut? Where does that come from?
I'll tell that story because you and I learned this a long time ago on NPR, and it's
It's a
such an
great story.
interesting story. This is where you got the inspiration for this from those. Yeah. So back when there used to be, and you know what? Didn't we recently see a friggin' traveling circus? We did
Yeah,
when
where were we?
we were driving around in North Carolina,
I
Appalachia
think it was here.
someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah. So traveling circuses, those were a real thing. And there used to be, I read a book when I was in high school about the not just traveling circuses, but there
The
were guys that would do
carnivals.
traveling air shows and they'd have the bi-wing
Oh,
planes.
yeah, yeah.
You remember
That's
that? And
cool.
this was after World War One.
Yep.
So in any event, Americana is just amazing when you take the time to learn the history of the country and all the little quirks and features. It's the reason I appreciated your Coca-Cola story, Julie. But the circuses, what they would do is they go from one town to the next, to the next, to the next. And they would oftentimes show up in a farmer's field and ask the farmer if they can use the field. And they'd say, we're going to pay the farmer $500 to be at this farm field for, a week or whatever. And big farms in the Midwest, the farmer's house would have been, potentially miles away. And so the farmer wouldn't have necessarily known whether the people were coming or gone and not have
Hmm.
paid the bill. So the farmer, and this is where, cover your nut comes from. The farmer then, and the agreement was, is the farmer would then take the nuts off the traveling circuses. What would they be called?
Like a
Carts,
trailer
basically.
hitch kind of thing.
Yeah, well, not just the trailer hitch, Julie, the things that held the wheels on, right? The
Yeah.
actual wheel nuts. They take them off, and then the farmer would keep them, and then they would get them back after they paid the bill. So
That's how you say covering the nut. What's
yeah,
the nut?
that's the story. But I think it's kind of interesting, whether it's true or not, who knows? But it's fun.
Yeah, I've heard that from European traveling carnivals and stuff like that too. So I think it's probably true.
Oh, Julie, I cannot believe you have this next one on your
It's
examples.
disgusting, but true.
Okay, go
All
for it.
these are researched, by the way.
Well, but it's important that we explain to them why we're interested in stuff like this, because as you grow older, your brain has a tendency and your thoughts have a tendency to sort of, become narrower and narrower and narrower in your focus. And so
Mhm.
by exposing yourself to different things, being a little bit of a polymath, if you will, is will allow your brain to stay elastic and allow you to become more curious about life in general, but also more interesting to other people. So if you start to look for little things, anything that sort of tickles your fancy and is interesting to you, you should follow that breadcrumb, because you don't necessarily. Here's the other thing that's magical about when you're allowing your brain to sort of, move away from the normal repetitious thinking that all of us are sort of cursed by, is that you will then, when you decide to read the book about, the octopuses, or you start to, go down the flight of fancy reading about the history of, farm fields, or, I mean, and we're in North Carolina in our cabin for another couple of days. And there's these magical quilts that you see everywhere. And they're not quilts,
Barn quilts.
they're called barn quilts. And even locals don't even know about this. We've actually, when we're driving around, we'll see these big, massive, I don't know what to call them. They look like murals. They're usually in the shapes of flags. And they look a little bit like tartan. But they're called barn
They
quilts.
look like quilt squares.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they do
Basically.
look like flags, but
Mhm.
you don't see them. They're kind of common, but not that common. And you're almost always seeing them on the sides of barns. Sometimes people put them on the sides of their houses. Well, what the heck are those things? Well, we started doing some research and we discovered, Julie Harris.
Well, there's different designs for different things, but it's basically kind of like a protectorate sign. So a lot of them will have a combination of like, if you imagine the wheat, the top of wheat, that design that's like herringbone, and that'll be a design that's on the side of the barn. Well, that's to protect your crops. There are other ones, like one of them is for hospitality. We know the pineapple is a hospitality sign, but it's a
But
riff
Julie,
on that.
you can get a little creepy. You're holding back on the creepy stuff.
There's some for fertility. There's different ones, but you're thinking about the blue color for the roofs and things like that to
Right.
protect from what they say are haints. Our southern listeners will know what that is. It's basically haunts to the rest of us. Ghosts and spirits that might come around your house. There's a shade of blue. You see a lot of blue porch ceilings are painted that color. It's not quite a turquoise. It's not quite a robin's egg blue. It's somewhere in between. A lot of metal roofs are blue, and some people paint their entire houses blue, or maybe the floor of your porch is that color, but that's to protect you from haunts.
And you can go to one of these local craftsmen. We haven't found one yet. That will then, you'll say, well, what are your, and sometimes, Julie, it's when we did read, correct me if I'm
Mhm.
remembering this wrong, but aren't some of them to protect people from witches? Wasn't that part
Yeah,
of it too?
there's a huge variety. It depends on,
What
where
your
you want to
jam
go.
is.
But yeah, I actually have somebody on Etsy that makes that. I finally found somebody for our side of our barn. We'll have to
Yeah.
decide on the design. But yeah, it's pretty interesting stuff.
Well, but
Americana, you know.
yeah, for sure.
But what got us on this tangent was you were talking about being a polymath and knowing a lot, you know, a little bit about a lot of things
Or
to
a
keep
lot
your
of,
mind,
or
or a lot about a few. Yeah,
no, actually a lot about a lot. That's what a
a lot
polymath
about a
is.
lot to keep your mind frosty
Exactly.
and to not get stuck in that mental hamster wheel. So, should we skip the next one because it's gross, or do
No, I'll
you
start
can
you
you
off.
can do that one?
Okay, so this is Julie's notes. Remember, and this is my first time seeing this. All right, so remember, this is the origins of everyday phrases you still use today. Ready for the next one? Remember, Julie Harris. Okay, this is her idea.
Lay it
The
on.
the next one is piss poor. Families sold urine for income.
It's true.
No chamber pot. You were too poor to piss in a pot. What the hell is the history of that one? Why would they?
Yeah. Well, so
Who's
why would
buying
you
urine?
sell urine? They sold it for tanning leather.
Ugh.
Isn't that disgusting? Now I bet you don't
Yeah.
want leather very much anymore. But that's true. I had several examples of that. This is especially in like 1880s England when it was quite a depressed time, Victorian England. And yeah, they would sell their pee. And if you didn't have a pot to piss in, you were piss poor because you couldn't even sell your pee.
All right,
That's pretty poor.
moving on to the next one, Julie.
Yeah.
Close but no cigar. What's the story with that one?
Well, carnival games used to offer cigars as prizes. So that's where close but no cigar, because you came close to winning, but you didn't get it. So no cigar for you. The next one is sleep tight. Why do we say sleep tight? Because beds were supported by ropes that had to be tightened over time. That's why we say sleep tight.
I didn't know that one.
I didn't either. Bite the bullet. Did you know this one?
You read it. Read it out
Okay.
loud. Share it with them.
Pre-anesthesia, soldiers bit down on bullets during surgery to get through it.
I'm gonna think that probably didn't do a hell of a lot to,
Either.
make
Probably
the
kept them
pain
from
go.
screaming though and distracting everyone else.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but you know what you should have been is opposed to bite the bullet. You should have been maybe biting down on one of those pieces of leather that had been specially
Ugh,
tanned.
ew.
I'm trying to tie it
I
together.
don't think that would help, but okay. So the next one is mad as a hatter. Hat makers were poisoned by mercury that were used in the felt to make the hat. That's why you say mad as a hatter. Isn't that funny?
Yeah, that is.
Okay, here's the next one. I only have a few more. The next one, I think maybe people know. Throw in the towel. What does that mean? Where does that come from?
That's from boxing, right? And so from boxing, when a fighter's trainer wanted to stop the fight, they literally threw in the towel to the ring to signal the surrender. And I think that's
Throw in the
probably more
towel.
commonly known because people, watch boxing and whatnot. So
Yeah.
that one's understood.
Interesting though, right? So the
Okay,
next
no,
one is the cat's out of the bag. Go
there
ahead.
you go. No, I was going to tee it off for you. In medieval markets, sellers would scam buyers by swapping a piglet for a cat in a sack. If the cat escaped, the con was exposed, the secret was out.
That's why we say the cat's out of the bag.
Okay.
When you say a secret, a secret was revealed, the cat's out of the bag.
No, I got it.
Okay, so I didn't know that one either.
I just don't know how dumb you'd have to be to think a pig was a cat, considering that, the cat's going to make cat noises and a pig's going to make pig noises. But
One would think. But
well, whatever. Or you wouldn't look in the bag, but I guess.
exactly. Okay, so moving on. Maybe this will be a theme going forward, maybe not. Okay. So, and listeners can send us, maybe there's some sayings that you use. Some of these are regional, some of these are historical. So, communicate with us. Maybe we'll highlight some of your sayings in the history. Just make sure you've done a little research and we'll maybe use it next week. Okay, point number 6, Kermitops, the fossil frog that looks just like Kermit. A newly named fossil, Kermitops gratis, is a 270 million year old proto-amphibian with big round eyes like Kermit and a wide smile. That's why they named it after Kermit the Frog. It was discovered in Texas in 1984 and identified in 2024 and named. So there you go. That's Kermitops.
In case you guys are wondering why Julie's so fascinated by these types of stories, it's because her dad is a physicist and her parents were both school teachers. But also where we grew up in Central Ohio, we met in high school. There were a lot of, what were those men called? They're not Indian mounds. They're called them something else. But there were a lot of unexplained things that were, a lot of people, essentially call them prehistory earthworks. And
Earthworks, yeah.
there's a really famous one, if you guys want to research this, and we used to see this when we were little kids, you all go on your field day. There is this massive earthworks of a huge reptile. And there are all these other things that were around. And remember, this is Central Ohio, right? Nobody thinks of Central Ohio as a, a center for all this sort of architectural
No,
and
there's a
amazing
lot of
stuff,
it.
but it was. And so
Mhm.
when we were growing up, and still to this day, scientists don't know who built them, why they were there. And there's actually Indian mounds. Indian mounds in a lot of the
Mhm.
country are not that common, but in Ohio, where we're from, they were very common, and no one really knows. And these are, obviously protected sites, but nobody knows why they were built, and they don't know what's inside the Indian mound. It's kind of like the pyramids in Egypt. There's all these strange, amazing bits of history that are all over the
Yeah.
country that if you just move away from the politics, move away from being triggered, move away from the Mickey Mouse headlines, and just start
Mhm.
exploring what's all around you, we are just so blessed to live in this country. It's just absolutely incredible. Jules?
Yes, and another great podcast is called Atlas Obscura, is
Oh,
where
yeah.
I get some of these ideas. I just listened to one this morning about a stair. If you and I have been to La Jolla, I was trying to think. You have a friend that lives in La Jolla, I think. I can't remember who that is.
I had a coaching client for a long time there that
Yes.
retired off his passive cash flow, and he doesn't sell real estate anymore. He sold his real
Okay,
estate
maybe
business.
that's what I'm
That's who you're
thinking.
thinking of. Yeah.
Okay, well, in La Jolla, which has a traditional downtown, old California town storefronts and all that, there is a store that you go in and you have to go to the back and you go down like a couple hundred staircase steps, and there's all these hidden caves down there. I just listened to an Atlas Obscura about that. And there's a whole backstory about how that happened. And a guy came from, I think, Germany in like 1880 and bought a plot of land and built the house there, and now to this day you can go down and check out the caves. So it's like, so the point of Atlas Obscura is revealing all of, to your point, all of these weird and amazing and unknown places
Well,
in the country and in the world.
let's break this open a little bit because your topics are all around essentially the same sort of overarching
Kind of
theme.
a theme, I guess.
So
Yeah.
y'all remember, and it didn't. This only stopped maybe in the last 20 years. But you all remember when we were shown sort of the evolution of man from
Yeah.
slug to monkey to different monkey to different monkey to different monkey. Well, it turns out that is all wrong. And now they're even, and some of you are going to be triggered when I say this. You guys go research this
Of course.
yourself before you're being triggered. If you haven't been exposed to what I'm about to tell you now, go and explore it yourself. But evolution has essentially been debunked. That's the theory of evolution has been debunked. For example, there are not coexisting on the planet at the same time. There were at least, I think it was 8 different humanoid,
Mhm.
bipedal, or it looked like,
Not like related to each other as cousins, but
no,
actual different
right.
species, so to speak.
Species, yeah. And so and how do they know that? And this is what's fascinating is that the scientists, for the longest period of time, certainly when we were growing up, were trying to validate the essentially man came from monkey and monkey became this and that. And they didn't want to address the fact that, well, then why are there still monkeys and just all these other, obvious maybe faults in the logic of it all. And what they would do, and this is, again, I'm not trying to trigger you. I just want to open your mind so you stop being and we had to do it too. Uh, it's fun to question your absolute, this is what I believe. This is the fact. This is what I've always been told. But
Mhm.
it's interesting to go and then research to see if that belief is right. And for example, evolution. So scientists, for the longest period of time, had tried to validate the theory of evolution. And these are scientists who built their careers around teaching it mostly and writing books and all the rest of it. And they falsified skeletal remains, trying to make it like they found the bridge skeletal remains. So, for example, if evolution is true with man, and one thing became another, we all started out as monkeys. Okay, why are there no I don't know, bridge fossils? Like here's a skull.
Evidence is what you're looking for.
Well,
Yeah.
evidence, but there's nothing that links. There's nothing that there should be. It doesn't just one day, a monkey doesn't just become a human, right? So there would be, if evolution is true, there would be a series of other, bipedal, animals
Historical
basically.
fossil evidence along that amount of time that one thing led to the next and it all came together.
Exactly, but there
Yeah.
isn't, and they've never found any. But what scientists tried to do is they created their own. They literally falsified it, and they
Well,
don't.
it was a thesis that we all ended up believing was true. I mean, you and
Exactly.
I grew up thinking that Pluto was a planet too. So
Damn
there's
it.
that.
Yeah,
you
they
know,
took that one away from us, didn't they?
yes.
So over time, when they started doing, carbon dating and they started to figure out different things, they found out that all of this evidence that most of our educations were based on was BS. And so all these people for all these periods of time, all these books had to be rewritten, all this stuff had to be. Now what they're doing is again, research this yourself because it's very interesting. Trust me, I would just have been happy with things not having changed, but now that the facts are.
It is interesting though. Yeah.
It's totally interesting. But you had on planet Earth simultaneously, I think it was 8 different humanoid, or I don't know what you want to call them, human-like animals, and humans, us, were just one of them. And they don't know why we won out, because if you see the skeletal remains of some of the other humanoids that were on the planet at the same time, they clearly could kick our ass. I'm just saying. Yeah. Okay. And so if there were 6 or there were 8, there could have been 12, there could have been 50 different humanoids on the planet at the same time. Now, maybe our relatives were able to live in a climate where essentially they could weather some sort of huge weather calamity, and who knows what. There's probably a very practical first principles type explanation as to why we're the dominant, humanoid species on the planet, though we do live in Appalachia. And I will tell you, okay, I'm just saying this to make Julie laugh, but the Bigfoot thing around here,
it's real.
It's real. People, there are places that you can go when you're driving around Smoky Mountains where people will take you on Bigfoot tours. There is a Bigfoot, now it's obviously a tourist trap, but on your way here, there's this huge, well, I shouldn't say, there's a house that basically along the side of a road where people sell nothing but Bigfoot memorabilia. So anyway, you have fun with it, right? Now, how much you want to bet? Yeah, we're laughing at it just to make ourselves laugh. We're going to bet Bigfoot's real. But Julie, my only point is that really it's fun, it's exciting, it's interesting to challenge all your precepts, because then you open your mind to really what else is my belief about life in general, or the history of man, or the ascent of man that might not be true. And I think that's exciting to
following the breadcrumbs and studying different things.
And you don't have to go on a podcast and talk about it. And
no, you don't have to totally nerd out. We'll do that for you.
Well, you don't have to subject yourself to criticism like we're doing right now by sharing this information with you guys.
Just be curious. That's what it comes down to.
Well, how long were we told that there's no health problem with high fructose corn syrup? How long were we told that all these other different things were true? And it's the powers that be for long periods of time, sometimes generational, 25 years or more, sometimes hundreds of years, they are able to maintain the story because it reinforces them. And when that all starts to come down, it all starts to shatter, it does make a lot of people very nervous and scared and threatened, but it's also very exciting because the removal of the myth, in many cases lies, allows the truth to come back in. And then that will essentially increase the velocity of our understanding of what it means to be a human on this planet, and essentially the history of man. For example, if you look back, and I'm almost done, Julie. If you look back at the history of the United States, if you look back at the belief about who settled the United States, you and I talked about this on one of these Friday freak off shows that we do, right? Where they found Viking stuff buried off the East Coast and sometimes in the Midwest, like actual Viking artifacts that were, what they say, Julie, the freaking like 1200s or something.
Something like that, like way before Pilgrims. Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's also, just it's incredible. Just open your mind. And when you start to open your mind, then you start realizing that, maybe because, for example, I'll tell you where my mind's going as I'm, vamping here, is that what if all of a sudden we really are at the foothills of an AI-led health revolution? And what if all of our beliefs about our longevity on the planet are going to be completely set aside for new health regimes, new health things we can do that make our bodies and our minds last over 100 years, 120, 130, 140 years? What if that's about to happen? What if maybe we live to 110 years, but maybe you're able to, the quality of your life doesn't drop like a rock in the last 5. You guys get what I'm saying? It's kind of an amazing time for us to all be alive. But if you are walled in with fear and fear of change, then you're not going to be embracing all these different things that are clearly afoot.
Or stuck in your ways, and, not keeping your mind open to the evolution of things. It's the human condition to be curious, but it's also at the same time easy to get stuck.
Let me make this relevant to real estate. Okay.
Sure.
So we were talking about Fannie Freddie at the top of the show about coming out of conservatorship and the different mortgage products and all the rest of it. And I vamp on this sometimes. I'll just be succinct. If you look to see the people that are talking against the release from conservatorship and, they want the government to maintain control of Fannie Freddie, they are the same people that have a dog in the fight. They're making money off the junk fees. And I'll give you an example. Someone asked me, Ray, asked me to break down what all the junk fees are, and I've been trying to do it. It's very difficult because they're so opaque, it's ridiculous. But like, what is it?
That would be an interesting spin-off podcast show. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah, but try to figure it out. It's super hard.
Yeah.
So like you think a junk fee would be what you see on a closing statement. And yeah, you'd be right. You think a junk fee would be PMI, and you're right. You think a junk fee would be all these other things. But what I've discovered, like, for example, when you buy a gallon of gas, all the junk fees that are, essentially included in the price you're paying for the gas, and all the taxes you're paying, junk fees, let's just call them what they are, that you're, essentially automatically paying for without questioning. And let's look at tariffs. Tariffs, turns out, have been one of the greatest, smart financial moves for the country. Some people are going to say it's too soon to tell. But the reality of it is the country's making billions and billions of dollars from tariffs. And for the most part, the tariffs have had zero negative effect on the economy. Again, I know the naysayers are going to say it's too soon to tell. But what's happened is the tariff, the 15%, let's say, on new cars, there's not a line item on the window sticker. That's just baked into the MSRP. And by the way, did you know that there has been a 2.5% tariff on all imported cars for like generations, for like, I think 30 years, maybe 40 years. And you never paid attention to it. You never get a hoot about tariffs. So the tariffs went from 2.5% to 15%, right? That's effectively what happened. But you won't, because it's baked in, people don't.
It's not a line item on the ticket when you,
So what I'm saying is a lot of our beliefs, a lot of our conceptions, have baked in information that we need to go back and dig through and really truly question.
You're saying we've accepted it as a fact, partially because it's obscure from our vision.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'll make this. I'm going to make this religious. Okay. Again,
Sure.
if I'm triggering you, just bear with me. I had a conversation with a new elite coaching client who said that they had come back to. It was a lady. She'd come back to Christianity. She grew up with it, went away from it, came back to it. And I asked her, well, so, I mean, what were you in the interim? She said, well, I actually called myself an atheist. And I was like, okay, well, so why did you do that? Well, I was living in an environment where it was kind of cool. I was going to yoga, and people certainly weren't believing in these old, mystical things of Christianity. And how can all this story, that's what she was saying. And she was, kind of trying to tell me that this is her arc that she went through in coming back to Christianity. And I said, well, what caused you to decide that you were no longer an atheist? I wasn't going to judge. I was just listening.
Being curious.
And she said, right. She said, well, I finally took the time to read what the values are of atheists, what it meant to be an atheist. And I said, so how many years did you call yourself an atheist? It's like 15. And I said, so in that time, you never actually took the time to explore what it meant. She said, no, I just thought it meant to be essentially agnostic with regards to religion. That's what I thought I was, just agnostic, like, oh, it's all good, it's all the same. But then I would tell people I'm an atheist, but then I read what it meant to be an atheist, and I absolutely wasn't in alignment with any of those values. And so I realized that I needed to essentially take a hard reset, set my ego aside, realize that all my friends and my center of influence and all these people who are maybe thinking of the same way, having religious free lives, maybe they're wrong because they've never taken the time to research all this. Those are the types of thoughts. That's the type of, I think, lack of exposure and questioning our own beliefs that limit our potential in life and make our world seem very, very small. And that's one of the reasons, in my opinion, it's been so easy to feel fractionalized in the United States. So that pendulum is definitely swinging back. That's what I'm thinking. You're smiling. What are you thinking?
I was thinking, I can't remember which teacher, and when we went to the AP, said they made fun of that type of thinking. They would say, well, I'm a nonconformist because you are.
Oh yeah, Ed Shea.
Remember that? Was it Ed?
Shea? Yeah.
Yeah, kind of demonstrating that point of not being introspective and not really following why you believe what you believe. So that's one of the reasons why we do this Friday show. You want to do?
No, I want to do number 7 is my favorite one. All right, I'll read the title and you can dig into it. All right.
Okay.
So what could go wrong, Cal? What could go wrong? California wants to rewild 1,000 grizzly bears. You know, it is funny. When we took Zoe to camp now a month ago, we were walking around Highlands, North Carolina, and
Mhm.
there's, well, beautiful place. Do it if you go there, have those
Way
adventures.
up in the mountains, but very beautiful.
4,300 feet, right?
About 4,000. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so you walk off the beaten path and you go down, and you're starting to walk in the woods. There are freaking beware of the bear signs everywhere. It's
Everywhere.
like it's like, hey, dumbass, there's bears here. And then you go a little further into the woods. It goes, no, 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 we're not kidding.
Those are
There-
black bears, though.
And
That's
then you get
very,
further into the woods and they say what you're supposed to do when you see a bear. I'm not making that up. Julie took a picture and put it on Instagram.
yeah.
So it's like, if you see a bear, this is after you've already really, like, you're deep in the forest. If you see a bear, don't turn and run. Walk backwards and don't break
Calmly.
it exactly calmly. And like, what is going
I know.
on?
I kept looking back at that path, going like, how am I supposed to navigate this backwards while freaking out over a bear?
Right. We were walking our French bulldog and we figured Max would give us the tip off before it was actually a
Yeah.
problem.
Also carrying him on the way. Yeah, we didn't see any. But our story number 7 is about grizzly bears. What could go wrong? California wants to rewild. I guess as if you could unwild a grizzly, but okay. More than 1,000. In a move straight out of Jurassic Park sequel, conservation groups want to bring back 1,183 grizzly bears to California, a species not seen in the state since 1924.
I
The
wonder
plan,
why. I wonder why we got rid of them in 1924. I don't know. It's like a mystery, right?
it's a mystery. Grizzlies would be reintroduced to wild regions like the Sierra Nevada and Northern California forests. They would translocate them out of Yellowstone, which is in, of course, Montana and Wyoming. Long-term recovery project with a 10-year, $30 million budget to do this. Bears would arrive in small groups to minimize disruption, and we assume surprise. So the pitch is advocates say grizzlies restore ecosystems, support native tribal connections, and fulfill California's symbolic state bear legacy. Critics say, have you met a grizzly?
No, but let's
Concerns
stop there.
include,
Stop there. Have you
yeah,
guys seen a freaking grizzly bear? Like a black bear versus a grizzly bear? If you've never seen what a grizzly bear looks like, I promise you, you will freak the F out.
and yes, we
They,
have. How did we do this on our US tour during COVID? We were at Bear World. Yes, there's such a thing called Bear World. I think that was in Oregon, if I recall
yep.
correctly. And it was interesting when we were there. I mean, we wanted to see bears. We had Zoe, we were on this mission to see bears. We hadn't seen them in the wild yet. Probably a good thing. So we went to Bear World. And the interesting thing was these, very cute black bears and brown bears. It's kind of like a really good version of the zoo. They had their enclosures, they had their trees and their rocks and their dens and the whole thing. And it's kind of what you would expect, right? So then you're driving through, because you're not going to go on a walk through there.
And you're
And
not supposed to get out of your car, but
yeah,
all the bears, including the black bears, are behind fences, just to be clear.
yes.
Yeah.
So then you drive around the corner to the next, however many acres. And this is where the grizzlies are. Totally different enclosure. There was like, much taller fences. I
Dude,
think they had razor wire on the top.
they did. It was triple layer fencing, razor wire on the top, and these things were
Like
unbelievably
three
huge.
times the size of a black bear.
So look, moral of the story is California, what the hell are you doing? Because here's the thing, what is going to hunt a grizzly bear? That would be
Nothing.
absolutely freaking nothing. So you're introducing back into your ecosystem a monstrous thing that nothing will be able to kill. And the grizzly bears will be able to take out everything. And I know the rationalization is the grizzly bears will take out some of the elk, that kind of thing. But that's not how it's going to work. This is a terrible idea. Like when they
Yeah.
reintroduced, like, hey, I got an idea. Let's reintroduce wolves to
To
Yellowstone.
Yellowstone. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, guess what wolves do? They make more wolves. And guess what more wolves do? They get bigger.
And they
and
kill
they
a lot of stuff.
and they kill a lot of stuff. So maybe people back in 1924, when they said, you know what, this grizzly bear thing, no bueno. Maybe there
Yeah.
was a reason. Do we really have to relearn what maybe we should have learned from past generations? There's
And why
probably
would you relocate them out of Yellowstone? Yellowstone has hundreds of thousands of acres. They're probably very happy there. Did anybody
I,
ask the bears if they wanted to relocate? I think not. So I'm thinking like Northern California, where they want to put these bears. Are you going to now have to have a bear disclosure when you close on property? Probably will. I'll never forget watching an HGTV house hunting show in Australia. Maybe you remember watching this with me. And because I didn't, we know real estate in the US really well from coaching for decades, but I like to look at worldwide real estate shows, right? So this couple was looking for something that had a nice view in Australia, and they found this really beautiful home with, a couple acres around it. And they're going on a walk in the backyard with their agent. And I'll never forget this. And the lady buyer goes, "What's the big fence for?" And the realtor, because she's lived there forever, it's like you grow up with this stuff, you don't think anything of it. She's like, "Oh, there's mountain lions out there, and then there's the other lions, and you just saw. I can't remember where they were relocating from to Australia, and you just saw the wheels turning. Like, lions, really?
Okay, so you're forgetting another story. So we went out to Red Lodge, Montana.
Oh,
This was
yes.
when we drove a Miata.
Pre-Zoe era.
Right, that was a Miata, right? Didn't we do that
Yeah, yeah,
Miata?
yeah.
Yeah. So we drove a Miata. This is like 92 or 93. And Julie had family friends that lived in Red Lodge, Montana, and we were going to stay with them on our little sojourn out to Seattle. And this is from Ohio to Seattle in Miata, okay? Back before things like backs hurting and such were an occasional problem, right? All right, so we are sitting in this hot tub, and it's Montana. If you've never been to Montana, it's the stars, the whole thing. So we're sitting in this hot tub with Rob and Ruth, and Julie and I are sitting with our backs to the back of their property. So in other words, behind us, it's pitch black, but behind us, there's nothing. We were up on an elevated deck, but there was nothing behind us. And they're sitting opposite of us with the house behind them. Hopefully you guys can visualize all this. And behind us, right where our heads were, there was the ledge of the deck. And the ledge of the deck was probably about 2 feet wide. These are the details that matter. So we're sitting and they had owned that house for at the time, I think like 5 years or something. And so we're sitting in this deck and we're talking about different things. We're talking about, of course, bears. Because being in Ohio, there were no bears, and we were bear curious. And then they started telling us how the previous owner would every night go and put food on the exact place where our heads were resting on that 2-foot plank. And he would put essentially a little food out there for the black bears, not grizzlies, for the black bears to come up and eat. And so here we are with our heads right where the sacrificial altar is supposed to be for the neighborhood bears. And like they told us, and what was really funny in retrospect is they didn't even blink as they told us the story. And then we didn't want to act like we were wimps, but we went on to ask, well, do they ever come back? Oh yeah, occasionally we'll see them, whatever, they'll come back. Do you remember that, Julie?
Totally remember that.
Yeah,
and
that was
being
crazy.
attacked by the deer, but that's a different story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, anyway,
okay,
that's our Friday show. We kind of like to have a little bit of fun with all of you on Friday and maybe let off a little bit of the tension. Listen, thank you for keeping this number one listened to, downloaded, and now viewed daily real estate podcast in at least America. It is our pleasure and our honor to be your real estate coaches. If you're not involved in any of our coaching programs, where maybe after listening to this show, you're not going to ever be involved because you think we're crazy, that's entirely possible that we are. But if you'd like to be involved in one of our coaching programs, look below. We're doing a series of masterminds. They're called Harris Mastermind, but the link to join is down below. And join us for a mastermind. If you love today's show, the masterminds are 2 hours. We focus on lead generation. We focus on the systems and the things you need to be doing now to actually make the most of what will be a long-term real estate boom. So click the link below or just go to harrismastermind.com. In the meantime, you have a fantastic day, and we'll be back to normal programming on Monday. Remember, you can listen to any of our past podcasts. There's literally 8,000 past podcasts. That's how long we've been doing this. You can listen to it iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify. I think on YouTube now we have over 2,000 shows. They don't let us load any more than that. But go and catch up. And have a fantastic day. We'll talk with you on the show tomorrow. Thank you for having watched this video. Please remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
That's right. And don't forget to hit that like button, leave your comments and questions below, and we will get right back with you.
Thank you for watching this video. And remember to watch the next one. You're going to love that one.